My father always seemed to favor my cousin, treating my brothers and me as if we were less important. It wasn't until years later that I discovered she was his secret daughter, and he'd been stashing away money for her college education since I was a child. My name is Olivia, and I'm the youngest in my family. I have two older brothers, James and Liam, who are twins. Growing up in our small town of Crestwood, the three of us often felt like our dad, Henry, cared more about our cousin Mia than he did about us. It might sound petty, but it's tough to grow up feeling like you're always in someone else's shadow, especially when that person doesn't seem particularly exceptional. Mia is a year younger than me, and the only child of my Uncle Daniel and Aunt Rachel. Naturally, they doted on her, which is understandable. But the real issue was how much my dad, Henry, adored her. He'd shower her with gifts, give her endless attention, and always seemed to prioritize her needs over ours. It left James, Liam, and me feeling like we didn't matter to him. From the time we were little, there was this unspoken tension in our family, mostly centered around Mia. When Mia and I were old enough, we started attending the same school, a decision pushed by both Uncle Daniel and my dad. They insisted we spend as much time together as possible, which always felt forced. Every morning, Dad would wake me up at the crack of dawn, and we'd drive across town to Uncle Daniel's house to pick up Mia before heading to school. It baffled me. Why couldn't she just take the bus like everyone else? If it were just me, I could have slept in, but whenever I questioned it, Dad would snap at me, telling me to stop complaining and to treat Mia like a sister. It made me feel like my own feelings didn't matter, like I was expected to just go along with whatever he decided. At school, Mia always wanted me to hang out with her constantly. She was a shy kid with few friends, while I had my own group I enjoyed spending time with. Mia didn't like that. After school, when Dad picked us up, she'd tattle on me if I hadn't spent lunch with her. Dad would scold me, saying I should be kinder to my little sister. I'd just roll my eyes, but it stung how much he seemed to favor her over his own kids. Uncle Daniel and Aunt Rachel never saw anything wrong with this dynamic. Dad and Uncle Daniel had always been close. They were only a few years apart and grew up as best friends in Pine Hollow, a neighboring town. Uncle Daniel, being the older one, taught Dad things like how to fish, how to change a tire, and how to fix up an old motorcycle. Their own father wasn't around much, so they leaned on each other heavily. That's why they wanted our families to be so tightly knit. My brothers once told me that our mom, Claire, wasn't thrilled about spending so much time with Uncle Daniel and Aunt Rachel, but she didn't have much say in the matter. They were always at our house. When Mom tried to talk to Dad about it, he'd dismiss her, saying family should stick together and that he enjoyed being around his brother. Mom didn't mind Dad hanging out with Uncle Daniel, but she felt obligated to play nice with Aunt Rachel, who was always tagging along. Mom and Aunt Rachel never really clicked. Mom found her too brash and overly talkative, and she didn't like how Aunt Rachel flirted with other men. It made sense, though. Aunt Rachel and Uncle Daniel had an unconventional marriage, one where both were free to flirt and see other people. Aunt Rachel would share details of her flings with Mom, which made her deeply uncomfortable. Mom always told us it was inappropriate to discuss such things around kids, and whenever Aunt Rachel and Uncle Daniel visited, she'd send us outside to play with the neighborhood kids. Dad, on the other hand, never seemed bothered by their arrangement. He'd laugh at their stories. The year Mom was pregnant with me, Aunt Rachel confided in her that she desperately wanted a baby too, but she and Uncle Daniel were struggling to conceive. Doctors had warned them it might not be possible, which caused a lot of tension between them. That's when they decided to open their marriage, hoping it might ease the strain while still staying together. But Aunt Rachel told Mom she still longed for a child. Mom suggested options like adoption or fertility treatments, which were expensive, but she encouraged them to find a way if it meant that much to them. When I was born, there were complications. Mom passed away due to severe bleeding, leaving my brothers and Dad devastated. They were heartbroken over losing her, but grateful I was born healthy, which is what Mom would have wanted. Dad was shattered. He stayed by Mom's side until the end, unable to accept she was gone. I can't imagine how much that hurt him, but he never once blamed me. I wish I'd known Mom. I miss her even though I never met her. My brothers have shared so many stories about her, but all I have are photos. That first year after Mom's death was rough for Dad and my brothers. They weren't used to caring for a baby girl, but Dad stepped up, and James and Liam pitched in. Those three have always been there for me, no matter what. Growing up, my brothers never fought with me. They'd take me everywhere with them, treating me like their little sidekick. I'd sit beside them while they played video games, and they never argued with me over food. I always got the biggest slice of pizza if I wanted it. They even let me use the bathroom first, knowing girls sometimes need it more. While my friends complained about their siblings, I never had that problem. James and Liam are laid back and rarely get upset. The biggest disagreement we ever had was over which movie to watch, and we just voted to settle it. I feel lucky to have such kind, caring brothers. After Mom died, Uncle Daniel and Aunt Rachel were around a lot. Fortunately, Aunt Rachel got pregnant just a year after I was born, which brought them a lot of joy after their struggles. When Mia was born, we spent a ton of time together because we were so close in age, and Dad and Uncle Daniel wanted us to be close. At first, it was fine, but being forced to spend every moment with someone gets old fast. When I started school, I made my own friends and didn't want to be tied to Mia all the time, but Dad and Uncle Daniel expected me to always look out for her. Mia could be a bit dramatic. She cried easily and didn't like to share, probably because she was an only child. Uncle Daniel and Aunt Rachel never corrected her behavior, so she carried that attitude to school. She'd argue with classmates over small things like borrowing a crayon, and if she disagreed with someone, she'd throw a tantrum. Other kids didn't like that, so they avoided her. When she complained to her parents, they'd blame the teachers or other kids instead of addressing her actions. Because I was stuck with Mia so often, I started losing patience with her. She was hard to be around. If she wanted to watch a certain TV show, that's what we watched, even if I didn't like it. If she wanted to eat at a specific diner, I had to agree, or she'd throw a fit. One time, I was invited to a birthday party, but the invitation was just for me. Aunt Rachel cornered me and Dad, insisting I bring Mia along. She called me selfish for not wanting to include her, which sparked another argument with Dad. I was exhausted from constantly being tethered to her. Mia also had an annoying habit of flirting with boys I liked. If she saw me talking to a guy, she'd swoop in, introduce herself as my sister, and tell embarrassing stories about me, like the time I tripped over my own feet in gym class. One day, I was chatting with a boy named Noah, someone I had a crush on. We were getting along well until Mia marched over, draped an arm around me, and said, "Hi, I'm Mia, Olivia's sister." She then launched into a story about me spilling juice all over myself at a family picnic. Noah looked awkward, and I was mortified. Mia just smirked at me, like she'd won some kind of victory. I walked away, fed up with her antics. When my brothers finished high school, they knew Dad didn't have much money saved for their college, so they worked hard to earn scholarships. Even then, they had to take out loans to cover the rest. I knew I'd have to do the same, so in my last 2 years of high school, I focused on studying instead of hanging out with friends. Mia would text and call, begging me to hang out, but I'd ignore her. She'd tell me I was wasting my time, that kids our age should be having fun. Once, she even showed up at the library where I was studying, demanding I leave with her to go to a party. I firmly told her I had to focus on my work and that she needed to respect my priorities. She rolled her eyes, called me a boring nerd, and stormed off. I felt a mix of frustration and a tiny pang of guilt, but I knew I was doing what I needed to do. When I graduated, I got accepted into 2 great universities. One was in the same city where Mia was going to school, and my family assumed I'd picked that one. Mia was thrilled, talking non-stop about how we'd share an apartment, take classes together, and have so much fun. The thought made me cringe. I cared about Mia, but I didn't want to spend my entire college experience glued to her. So, I chose the other university, the one farther away in Riverton. I didn't even discuss it with Dad. I had a scholarship and was taking out a loan, so it was my decision. When Dad found out, he was furious. He tried to guilt me into changing my mind, saying he was disappointed I'd choose a school just to avoid Mia. He insisted having a sister like her was a blessing. That set me off. I told him I already had siblings, James and Liam, whom I loved spending time with. I told him to stop forcing Mia on me, that I was an adult now and needed to make my own choices. Uncle Daniel and Aunt Rachel were upset too, calling to say how much Mia had been looking forward to living with me, but I stood my ground. I was happy with my decision. The day I was packing to move into my dorm, I heard Aunt Rachel's car pull up. She often visited Dad since my brothers moved out, sometimes cooking for us. I usually tried to be out of the house when she was around, but this time I was stuck. I locked myself in my room, hoping Dad would assume I was asleep and wouldn't call me downstairs. I could hear them chatting and laughing, and curiosity got the better of me. I peeked out of my room and strained to listen. That's when I heard Dad mention something about a college fund. My heart raced. I crept downstairs to hear better. Dad told Aunt Rachel he'd been saving money for Mia's college for years, ensuring she'd never need a loan. He said it was all taken care of. I froze, stunned. Dad had never mentioned a college fund to me or my brothers. Why would he do that for Mia and not us? I felt betrayed and hurt. Why hadn't he considered how I'd pay for college? I slipped back upstairs and called James and Liam, asking if they knew anything about this. They were just as shocked as I was. We tried to make sense of it, but nothing added up. Then a thought hit me, and I blurted out to my brothers, "Do you think Mia might be Dad's daughter?" They were silent. Liam said it was impossible, but James admitted he'd wondered the same thing before. He pointed out there was no other explanation for Dad's obsession with Mia, and he noted that she had our dark brown hair, like Dad's, while Uncle Daniel was blonde. It could have been a coincidence, but Dad's behavior had always seemed off. I decided I had to know the truth. My brothers asked how I'd find out, and I told them I'd secretly get some of Mia's hair for a DNA test. They were hesitant but agreed, urging me to be careful. That week, I invited Mia to hang out and managed to snag some hair that had fallen onto her sweater without her noticing. I felt guilty, like I was betraying her, but I needed answers. Waiting for the DNA results was agonizing. I kept hoping I was wrong, unsure what I'd do if Mia was my sister. When the results arrived, they confirmed Mia was my half-sister. We shared the same father. My world spun. I was overwhelmed with confusion, anger, and sadness. I couldn't believe Dad had hidden this from us for so long. Knowing Mia was my half-sister, not just my cousin, changed everything. It was too much to process. I needed time to think. I was furious at Dad for lying, and at myself for not seeing it sooner. Looking back, it was obvious he and Aunt Rachel spent too much alone time together. The fact that Mia was born just a year after me meant Dad had been with Aunt Rachel within a year of Mom's death, which made me feel sick. I called my brothers, crying, and told them the truth. I sent them photos of the DNA results. They were silent for a moment before erupting in anger. They wanted to confront Dad immediately, but I knew that wouldn't change the past. He'd slept with his brother's wife, and she'd gotten pregnant. That was the reality. Instead, I suggested we cut him off. He'd done nothing to support us through college, letting us take out loans while secretly funding his child with another woman. James agreed, and though Liam was still in shock, he came around. Now that we knew the secret, I decided to reveal the truth in a way that Dad couldn't ignore. I asked my brothers not to confront him yet, and to drive me to college on move-in day instead of letting Dad take me. They agreed without hesitation. On the day I was leaving, I invited Mia over to say goodbye. Dad was there, acting cheerful as usual, giving Mia a big hug. She chattered about moving into an apartment, and how her mom had just told her about a secret college fund set up years ago. I silently scoffed, knowing exactly where that money came from. Mia went on about how her mom had saved thousands, so she wouldn't need loans like me. I bit my tongue, holding back my anger. When James and Liam arrived, they barely acknowledged Dad. The tension was palpable. Dad tried to talk to them, but they brushed him off, a stark contrast to our usual respect for him. After loading my stuff into the car, I turned to say goodbye to Dad. He reached out to hug me, but I stepped back. He looked hurt and asked if something was wrong. I stared him in the eye and said, "I wish Mom were here." He seemed confused and pained, but I didn't care. After the secret he kept, I wanted to scream, but I held it in. I hugged Mia goodbye and slipped her an envelope, whispering to open it in front of Dad after I left. She nodded, and we drove away. I knew this would blow up our family, but the truth had to come out. Mia deserved to know about her mom and our dad. As a backup, I sent a photo of the DNA results to Uncle Daniel. Within 30 minutes, my phone started ringing nonstop, calls from Dad and Aunt Rachel. My brothers got calls too, but we didn't answer. Then Uncle Daniel called, and I picked up, knowing he'd be reeling. He asked if the test was fake. Overwhelmed with emotion, I told him I wished it were. I explained how much this hurt me and my brothers, how it shattered everything we thought about Dad. Uncle Daniel took a deep breath and asked if I was okay. His concern made me break down. He'd always been a steady presence in our lives, and I hated being the one to break this news to him. But even in his pain, he was kind, reassuring me I hadn't done anything wrong and thanking me for telling him the truth. Now that I'm in college and my brothers are on their own, I've had time to reflect on how this has fractured our family. I feel like I've done something wrong and worry about what's next. Was I wrong to tell Mia the truth? Did I do the right thing? Update 1. Since the truth came out, everything's been chaos. I learned that Mia and Uncle Daniel moved out of their house quickly, wanting nothing to do with Aunt Rachel. Aunt Rachel's reaction has been awful. She's bombarded me with texts, some viciously accusing me of ruining her life, others trying to justify her affair with Dad. She even claimed I broke up her marriage, and that Mom would be disappointed in me for tearing the family apart. As for Dad, he's been silent since that day. No calls, no texts. That's fine by me. There's nothing he could say to make me forgive him. I know deep down that telling the truth was right, but I still feel guilty for causing so much pain. Update 2. Some have suggested I call Mia and apologize, but I've decided against it. I'll never see her as my half-sister. She'll always be my cousin. That doesn't mean I hate her. I don't. I was just forced to look after her constantly, which bred resentment. I hope she's happy and can move past this. Others have urged me to hear Dad's side, but I can't. Imagine your parent having an affair with their sibling spouse, hiding a child for years, and making you befriend the child to cover it up. Could you forgive that? I can't. I've thought it over, and that betrayal is unforgivable. Update 3. Uncle Daniel and Mia visited me at college. I was nervous, but Uncle Daniel greeted me with a warm hug, easing my tension. Mia and I exchanged polite hellos, though it was awkward. Uncle Daniel said he cut off contact with Dad since that day, which was sad but unsurprising given the affair. He's divorcing Aunt Rachel, and was furious when I showed him her harassing texts. He took photos of them for his lawyer, determined to handle it legally. Mia asked how I was doing in college and brought up the college fund, revealing she'd returned the money to Dad and told him never to contact her again. She found the affair disturbing and couldn't accept him as her father. I told her she did the right thing, especially since Dad still hasn't owned up to his actions. Uncle Daniel shared that he'd nearly confronted Dad physically the night he found out, but Mia stopped him. He said if not for her, Dad wouldn't be standing. I understood his rage. Raising a child for years only to learn his brother was her real father was a devastating betrayal. After talking with them, I feel better about cutting Dad off. My brothers and I are doing well. We're a tight-knit family and plan to work in the same city someday, living close to each other. They're my rock, and I'm grateful for them.